There it goes. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee and Conversations, where we have intimate, real, honest, and raw conversations about race, race. How do I want to say this? Around race, racial equality, racial injustices, and just really how it's showing up in our lives at home and in our communities. And today I'm excited to have Lori Pyatt with me.
Thank
Now,
you for having me.
Lori is a trauma trained certified mentor, and her husband's mentoring program is over 80% successful in helping people heal after betrayal from sex addiction and or porn addiction. And so one of the reasons I asked Lori to be on here with me, because we were having a conversation, a really nice, intimate conversation, actually,
Yeah.
about race, and she shared with me some of the conversations she's been having in her own family and in her communities around this topic and how she's introducing it. So, welcome, Lori.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So, I know you were one of the attendees on our Allyship Awareness Forum.
Mhm.
So, if you can tell me a little bit about, if you were to answer this question before attending this event, I was.
Just like you say, I wasn't even on formula yet. I was on breast milk. Yeah, the lack of information that I sought, the lack of information I'd been given, the lack of information in textbooks. Uh, I hardly knew anything. I hardly knew anything. And then to dig in deeper, and I mean, part of that's my own fault. I have to be honest. Up till now, I, I've heard about it, and I've thought I was a fighter for justice. It felt so heavy that I kind of didn't even want to go there. But I saw some things, and I thought, okay, I can't stay silent.
Yeah. It's I have a similar experience because there was so much I didn't know as well, especially when it came to history,
Mm-hmm,
my own
mm-hmm.
experiences, and I know my own resiliency around those experiences. And one of the things that's really come to light for me is how much um, Black female voices, how many stories we have that we've never shared,
Mm-hmm.
that are unheard and unshared around our experiences being a Black and female in
Mm-hmm.
a white patriarchal society. So I
Mm-hmm.
totally get that. And one of the things I'm really careful of is, the blame, the shame, and the guilt.
Yeah.
Know, you know, we all are waking up to different things, and
Yeah.
different feelings and different emotions. So my next question for you is: after attending this event, I am.
Much more knowledgeable that I need to get much more knowledgeable. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit more informed. That panel, if you guys haven't looked into it, definitely buy it. It's definitely worth it. Um, but that panel, I liked how you kept it on time.
Mhm.
Everybody had a set amount of time, and I like that you respected that. But there was so much given, so much information in each little segment that I must have taken like 15 pages of notes, and I probably didn't capture half of it because
Yeah.
everybody was just like, and look in this, and look into this, and look into this. So it definitely got me looking into um, different subjects, different topics. It kind of set me on the right path to kind of do my own research in this on the subject.
Yeah, and that was the intention, to really create a series of aha
Hmm.
moments that get to be looked at and delved in deeper and further. And so, what would you say was an area where you personally have looked into getting more knowledge on and education on?
Um, I think just the whole subject, the can you hear me okay? I'm hearing kind of a weird echo. I just want to make sure you're hearing me okay.
I'm hearing you okay on my
Okay.
end. Yes.
All right. For me, it's mainly the different ways that injustice has been visited upon people of color.
Mm,
I've also, kind of as a wide thing, but also with a close friend of mine and then my daughter. She's half Native American.
mm,
Um, and my friend had been treated like she was, from south of the border, but she's actually from Spain, and that's where my people come from.
mm,
I'm Hispanic, so it's to hear their stories. I have a couple clients, that I touched base with and kind of asked their stories as well, because they're people of color as well. So it's more of the wider thing, but also down to my own daughter. Like, because you have to understand, she's drop dead gorgeous. I'm not even being biased. She's gorgeous.
I can imagine.
And so I thought people would look at her and go, she's just beautiful. But she had been told to go back where she came from because she doesn't, she said she looks everything. She looks Mexican. She looks, Middle Eastern. She looks Native American. Um,
Mm. Had
so
she shared had she shared those incidents with you before, or do
no,
you find that they're coming out more now?
yeah, it actually kind of was a moment of healing between us because I said, Cindy, I never knew that.
Mm.
And I'm so sorry that I didn't feel safe enough for you to bring that kind of information to me.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And it really kind of goes to what I said earlier. There are so many stories living inside
Mm-hmm.
Black and brown women,
Mm-hmm.
especially, that we've built up this level of resiliency over because, is it worth the fight? Are things ever going to change? It really is, I still have moments of, we're going to be putting so much effort and energy. Will there be really sustainable change and transformation
Right.
on this? But
Mhm.
the intention is to, I like to say, train an army to fight
Mm-hmm.
alongside of us
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I really believe it is a grassroots thing. I mean, down to families, because I think if I were to tell my families that stuff, in fact, I told my sister yesterday what my daughter had, just one of the pieces of it, and she's like, "Oh," she's just indignant. But this is our own family, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And
So,
what that brings to light is, when you have this surprise and shock over what people are experiencing, it brings to light just how many blind spots you have, and I'm
yeah.
not saying you personally, I'm saying the bigger you, just
Hmm.
how tone deaf and blind we really are to
Hmm.
these incidents and injustices in the world. Because,
Hmm.
if you talk amongst women of color or people of color or Black men and women alike, these are not surprising. These are not shocking. So,
Right.
what is it about, you know, white and white presenting people that they just don't see it and don't notice it?
Are you asking me? I
Well,
think.
it's a question to be put out there. I don't know if any of us really have the answers to it, but
Mhm.
you know, what I'm noticing is the amount of shock. And I'm also thinking, like, how could you not see that? And it really just goes, for me, my explanation is just how systemic racism is, that
Mhm.
the blind spots are really, really blind.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think there's a part of it that it is uncomfortable and we don't really want to see it.
Mm,
It is like I'm looking at uh, people falling in line behind certain political issues, and they're kind of being fed not the full story. And I'm like, how how can they believe this? Because it's kind of far fetched what they're being told. And just the thought dropped in my mind, it's because they want to.
yeah, and there's a certain amount of laziness that goes in. I mean, you
Yeah.
see yourself, and I see myself, the amount of effort and energy put into educate,
Yeah.
ourselves and, okay, let's do some research on this. Like my husband's a great researcher, and there are times when I don't feel like it, but I know he loves it. He feeds off of research.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's on vacation, like, yeah, can you look into where we should go and what we should eat and, places we should see? Because
Yeah.
there is so much effort and energy that will challenge us, that will make us feel uncomfortable. And yeah, a lot of these things are uncomfortable to face ourselves, to face within ourselves and what we find out. And I was listening to a podcast from Brene Brown that someone in our Intimacy of Race group had shared with me. And really, it's the shame and the guilt will create this avoidance, because shame and guilt will make us feel like we are bad.
Right.
And will make it personal.
Mm-hmm.
And the important distinction, because you do see a lot of arguments and defensiveness come up in the white community when discussing these issues, because of the individualized, I must be bad because I participated in this, and like, no, you are not bad people. It doesn't make you a bad person. I think when you choose to continue on that path, you should look at, your motives, which leads me to the next question. Since attending this forum, what are you committed to doing now? And how are you committed to showing up now?
I am committed to sharing the truth of what I'm finding with people who want to know it. I am not, I've learned my lesson. I'm very much an adherer of Jesus's words because I'm a Christian, not typical Christian, but, I'm not well, anyway, but I believe in Jesus's words where he says, do not throw your pearls before people who basically will trample on them, because they will do that. And then they'll turn and tear you apart. And so I'm only interested in sharing the information with people who do want to change, because almost right off the bat, I've seen already with this issue, if they're not really interested, suddenly there's a lot more balls I have to hit, that they're throwing, balls at me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not even an issue. And so you're doing, they're basically kind of showing me a little bit of racism, in their responses. And so then I have to get,
it is racism, and it's a lot of it is just fear of change. It's fear of losing authority. It's fear of the unknown. What does this mean? And I think, just listening to you, a lot of people are taking it like personally, because if you bring that up to that, it makes them a bad person. And they know they're not bad, and they still may have these beliefs and patterns and behaviors, but it's how much it just hits at home that brings up that defense. So that
I think it's also, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. Please go ahead.
I also think it's the typical response that we've learned. If you see somebody who was killed by police, immediately you see their criminal record.
Yeah.
If you see somebody who's, I hate that this is still happening, but hanging from a tree, immediately they're, making sure with the family, that the person was depressed, right? Even though there's a lot of weird circumstances around it. So
and people do that with victims too, If somebody is a victim of a sexual assault, they somehow make the victim wrong or responsible for having that on there. And I see that as a great analogy with the people looking at the criminal records of people who are victims of unsavory police tactics.
Right. Another thing I'm committed to is just letting the people I talk to know that because of my work with men who basically have acted out outside the marriage and women who have been traumatized by it, I have a lot of trauma, how to heal trauma, how to calm it down. And one of the techniques is if you just wait the discomfort out for 60 to 90 seconds, it'll pass. Because
Mm,
that's the chemical rush when we feel something intensely, that chemical rush really can only last about 60 to 90 seconds.
mhm,
And so I tell them, if you can just endure this for
mhm.
60 to 90 seconds, then figure out what's true. What's going on in you? What's happening? Are you ready to accept these facts yet? You know?
I'm finding it's similar to what I heard Brene Brown say yesterday when I was listening to her podcast was we really want to be right and we should want to do right. People
Ah,
are
I love
so
that.
fighting to be right
Mm-hmm.
and they need to be committed to doing right.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's when we'll have change because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to stumble along the way. We're not going to get it right, but we need to be committed to getting it right.
Right.
And
Right.
what you hear in a lot of conversations is people wanting to be right
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah.
why this is happening and not
Mm-hmm.
take a moment and pause and to be open to listening. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I got a response yesterday in an email from a video that I shared with my email list, just accusing me of telling people how to think and what they should do. And literally I'm sharing my feelings. I'm sharing what's coming up for me and sharing, I know you're a trauma healer. And there have been a lot of people who are in the healing space reaching out to me, a few, I should say, not a lot, wanting to help me heal. And what I
Yeah.
shared in that video was, I'm not looking for healing. You
I
know,
listened to that video. You slapped me around a few times. I was just like, not really slapped me around, but it's like, oh wow, that's just mind bending. But I loved what you said about that because that's what it is with my clients too. It's like just listen to her. It's
Mhm.
uncomfortable. Just listen. That's all they're really wanting, and then hear like what we can do
Yeah,
together after that.
yeah. I mean, because I teach around and I coach around a lot the 5 relationship styles, and one of them is the evader. You want to
Mm-hmm.
evade the emotions and the feelings because they are painful, and
Mm-hmm.
the only way out is through.
Yep.
But there is a way out,
Mm-hmm.
and to sit with the discomfort. A lot of it is painful, and a lot of it is uncomfortable, and I don't have a desire to heal the pain I'm feeling. I want to use the pain I'm feeling to keep going,
Right. Right.
to not give up the fight. And that's my personal feeling. So it's not that I don't appreciate and love people for what they're offering to do, but
Mhm.
to me, it's avoiding.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Like, I need to feel the emotion. I need to feel the pain. And just like, even in relationships, when couples are going through these challenges, I mean, you and I first connected, gosh, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, around
Yeah.
something similar.
Mhm.
When I shared my story of what it felt like to be betrayed, but also taking responsibility, and some of the things my husband and I had to face about ourselves
Mhm.
was very, very uncomfortable and painful, but we were so committed to getting it right so that our relationship would thrive, not just
Right.
survive the betrayal and the
Mhm.
breakdown, but really thrive after it and be better
Yeah.
than it was before. That
Mhm.
it took going through that.
Mhm.
And I see a similar parallel, and that's what I'm coaching my clients in to, what, it is going to be uncomfortable, but what you learn about yourself and creating understanding and compassion for other people through this process is
Mhm.
incredibly valuable for every area of your life and
Mhm.
opening up these conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one of the last things I wanted to ask you is, you did mention that you are not going to throw your pearls before swine. I know that's scripture.
I
So,
didn't want to say it quite that way, but
let's tell it like it is.
yeah.
What are some of where are you seeing pushback happen in your family life, in your business, maybe even with some of the clients that you're working with, or in your overall community? Because I know you mentioned you do have some community groups that you're involved in as well. What are some common pushbacks that you're experiencing?
The biggest one was in a group that I lead. It was right after I had just done a ton of research on, or just not really research, but just was hit in the face with like this list. At that point, it was 350 instances. Now it's like 724 instances of police brutality since the BLM protests started. And I didn't go through all of them, of course, but just what I was seeing was just like mind bending. And then, I heard some other stuff, and it really affected me. And so when I was on the group, I said, with the Black Lives Matter protests, you guys might have seen some things, some instances of police brutality, and let them know this is the stuff we've been talking about, ladies. The abuse, the entitlement that leads to the abuse in your own lives is what's happening out there. It's just these people have been living it their entire lives. We've just seen it since our D-Day, since we've learned about the betrayal. So I was hoping to help them see a little bit of or have a little bit of compassion there. But I said, so we'll go our normal time, because that's what you guys paid for. If you're interested in what you can do, if you're interested in looking at your own stuff to know what you can do, stay on after the call, after the normal part is over. I understand if this is not a good time. I understand you guys are healing from your own trauma. I get that. But if you feel like you want to stay on and kind of dig deeper in yourself to know what you can do, then stay on. Well, some people stayed on that weren't interested in it. They just wanted to kind of observe and then judge. And so I had some emails after that where, again, it's like they're throwing balls at me, and I'm just like, this is why I asked. If you want to really look at your own stuff and do something to help the cause, then stay on. And so that, that took up several hours of figuring out, okay, how do I respond graciously to this person? And then when it continued, okay, how do I kind of confront them and say, like, I feel like I'm being tested. I asked for, the people that wanted to stay on. And that, so anyway, it went from there. But that's kind of the backlash. I don't really want to waste time on or waste effort on people that aren't ready to look at the hard stuff yet, or that don't feel like it, that just like, no, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with it's like, fine, that's fine. Like, seriously, I'm no judgment here. Just leave me alone so I can do the work I feel like God's given me to do.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate you going there. And one of the things I do want to share with anybody who's watching this live or on the replay is, when you feel that feeling of, how do I respond to this person? How do I be gracious in my response? How do I use words that open them up? It's probably about 10 million fold for people of color, for black people who are getting these same type of responses. I'm getting these responses all the time, and it's incredibly triggering. However, I've made the commitment to create these opportunities for conversations with people, so that I can hear their heart and they can hear my heart, and maybe I can inspire them or influence them in any way to see things from a different perspective, because it is incredibly energy draining, painful to, like, it's just like, Like,
Yeah.
I feel that a lot. And so I just want to take a moment to really let you know how much I appreciate you and what you're doing personally, to see how the racism shows up in your life personally, at home, work, in your communities, how you've been shaped by the forces of racism. I know we've chatted a little bit about that as well. And,
Mhm.
and just being willing to listen to the hard stuff and
Mhm.
sit with it
Mhm.
and take action steps. So I
Yeah.
appreciate being here. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so next Friday at 9 a.m., this was just kind of a little bit of an earlier broadcast today because of another commitment I have right after that. I'm actually going to be speaking on a panel around diversity, equity, inclusion, and racism for a large healthcare company.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm really excited about that opportunity to just share and hopefully open them up for different perspectives as well. So
Mhm.
thank you everybody who joined.
Mhm.
Thank you, Lori, for being with us. And I'll
Yeah.
see you guys next Friday at 9 a.m. on Coffee and Conversations. Bye.
Thanks.